Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here, and welcome to the first part of my fairly ambitious project to review every episode of SpongeBob ever. We've got a lot of ground to cover, but first we need to get a few things out of the way. So, one day I was searching forums for my name on Google, as one does, when I came across this post on SpongeBob Mania. Basically, it was about how some people think SpongeBob Season 9 is actually really good, while others, like myself, continually state that the series will never have another good season. But what exactly does it mean to have a good season? Well, for an episodic show like SpongeBob, it all boils down to one question. Was there significantly more good or bad episodes in the season? So, yeah, I think it's safe to say that seasons 1 through 3 were good seasons, season 4 was split, and seasons 5 and onwards are all bad. But it's actually not that simple. I haven't seen at least half of the post-season 4 episodes, so it really isn't fair for me to judge them as a whole like that. Sure, some episodes I have seen, and trust me, they are bad episodes. But to really figure out which seasons are considered good and which are considered bad, in my humble opinion, I need to watch all of them, including seasons 1 through 3, but this time holding a critical eye instead of a nostalgic one, because honestly, it's been years since I've seen some of these episodes, although I have seen them many times as a kid. So you might be wondering how I'm going to review 41 episode segments all in this video. And now you're probably checking the time to see how long it is. Well, I made a secret formula for it. First, I watch every episode in the season, taking notes along the way. Then, I took those notes and turned them into categories you'll see on your screen. Take, for example, the first episode. You have the episode number, name, and a brief synopsis in the box up top, a fun fact about the episode over on the left, a highlight of one of my favorite parts of the episode in the middle, a picture either blatantly or stealthily representing something from the episode, and lastly on the right, a quote from the episode. Also, if you see a leg in the corner of the screen, it represents an episode with the "my leg" gag. There may also be other fun Easter eggs on screen, but I'll let you figure out what they mean for yourself. After all this, the episode will be judged with one of 3 ratings. Good episode, the episode was consistently funny and interesting. Meh episode, the episode was either lacking in jokes or had a bad story element. Or a ScumBob episode, meaning that the episode was either really not funny, had a really stupid or boring plot, or any of a number of other reasons as to why an episode could be awful. But I'll be explaining more about each episode as I review it, so the rating will make more sense. Alright guys, let's get things started with episode 1A, Help Wanted. SpongeBob applies for a job at the Krusty Krab. This is the first episode to feature SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Gary, and Mr. Krabs. My favorite part of the episode was SpongeBob making the Krabby Patties for the very first time. Yes, it's a classic. Yes, everyone remembers it. But is it a good episode? Yes. Yes, it is. The humor may not be as developed as later on, but it is definitely a nice taste of things to come, with some interesting word humor, some fun gags, some fun sequences, of course that memorable Krabby Patty making sequence, and just a generally solid plot. Moving right along, we have episode 1B, Reef Blower. SpongeBob annoys Squidward with, what else? A reef blower. There are no voices in this episode. Now, I've heard rumors online about how the recording studio messed up the day they went in to record this, or something similar to that, but I have no clue if that's true or not. Regardless, there are no voices in the episode. My favorite part? The shell landing on Squidward's nose in irony at the very end. Yeah, it's short, it's silent, but is it good? Indeed it is. Yeah, the silence could have gotten annoying if it was a long episode, but at only like a minute and a half, it really doesn't get irritating, and it allows for some cool visual humor. Next up, we got 1C, Tea at the Treedome. SpongeBob meets Sandy and visits her at her home. Fun fact, first appearance of Sandy. Go figure. My favorite part is SpongeBob's dried out freak out. It's the episode where Sandy's introduced. Is it a good one? Yes, I think it is. Oh man, SpongeBob's freak out and the pinky out quote, such memorable lines and sequences, really fun episode, and really good showing of the kind of odd humor that SpongeBob would later go on to perfect. Alright, we got episode 2A, Bubblestand. SpongeBob sets up a bubble stand to teach a lesson on how to blow bubbles. Fun fact, there is a song on the SpongeBob movie CD which I may or may not own about this episode. My favorite part? SpongeBob's bubble blowing technique. Come on, who doesn't love to bring it around town, am I right? Is it a good episode? I almost actually said no, but it's a good episode. Yeah, I've seen this episode so many times that honestly I was willing to write it off for having very little plot and very little interesting humor going on. but that's just because I have this episode pretty much memorized. I mean, the whole bubble blowing sequences, the whole dance sequences, the Squidward being a hypocritical grump, these are all great things that SpongeBob would later reuse and reuse. I guess I consider it being unoriginal here, but it's where it all began, so yes, it is a good episode. Episode 2B, Ripped Pants. SpongeBob embarrasses himself by ripping his pants. Fun fact, this is the first appearance of Larry the Lobster and obscure character Scooter the Surfing Fish. My favorite part? The Ripped Pants song. Yes, it's a bit weird that there's an episode themed around ripping your pants, but is it good? I would say so. SpongeBob trying to be funny by ripping his pants and everyone getting annoyed by him is some classic SpongeBob humor right there. Also, the random music number is great. We get our second appearance of Sandy and our first appearance of the Goo Lagoon. So, overall, solid episode. Break out them jellyfishing nets because it's time for episode 3A, Jellyfishing. When Squidward gets injured, SpongeBob and Patrick try to give him the best day ever by taking him jellyfishing. Fun fact, Patrick says, "Merry Christmas!" although technically he shouldn't know about Christmas until the Christmas episode. My favorite part? Patrick accidentally torturing Squidward through the entire episode. But was it torture for us to watch? No, it's a good episode. The whole SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally torturing Squidward thing is hilarious, especially in this episode. Squidward's reactions and SpongeBob and Patrick being ignorant to it all is just really funny. Ladies and gentlemen, hide your Krabby Patties because we have episode 3B, Plankton! Plankton takes over SpongeBob's brain in an effort to steal the Krabby Patty formula. Fun fact, and stay with me on this one, guys, this is the first appearance of Plankton. And a prototype of Karen. She voices the machine that is used to analyze the Krabby Patty, but she doesn't actually have a personality yet. My favorite part? Plankton's record player. Come on, letters of the alphabet, A, B, C, and that classic evil music. Good stuff. But is this episode's quality comparable to Plankton's size? Not sure how to answer that, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it's a good episode. It's the first episode to have, well, not just Plankton, but also some sci-fi elements to it, and Plankton is such a joy to watch. He is overly evil here, and being a single-celled organism, he's also easily distracted by SpongeBob's joy and happiness. It's really funny to see him snap from being evil to being really happy in just a split second. They do a lot of fun things in this episode, so yeah, it's a good episode. Hope you guys are feeling naughty, because we're up to episode 4A, Naughty Nautical Neighbors. SpongeBob and Patrick fight over who could be the better friend to Squidward. Fun fact, Squidward claimed he was playing Solitude in E minor, yet he actually played in F minor. My favorite part of the episode was Squidward choking on the fork and the whole KO in his eyes and everything. Good sequence. But is it a good episode? Yes, it is. Much like Jellyfishing, it's one of those episodes where SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally torture Squidward, but add in the extra wrinkle that SpongeBob and Patrick think that they hate each other, when really they both just want to be friends again. It's incredibly silly and incredibly fun. So it's a good episode. Shift into first gear, because it's time for episode 4B, Boating School. Sick of failing his driving test, SpongeBob attempts to cheat. Fun fact, this is the first appearance of Mrs. Puff and the "my leg" gag. My favorite part? Inflated Mrs. Puff. What's not to love about her super deep voice? But, is this episode deep, or is it shallower than the cast of the Jersey Shore? It's not a good sign when we're only like 9 episodes in and I'm already stretching my analogies. It's a good episode, guys. Let's back up into episode 5A, Pizza Delivery. SpongeBob and Squidward get lost while trying to deliver a pizza. Fun fact, this episode was voted number 1 in the Ultimate Sponge Bash. The highlight, of course, is the Krusty Krab pizza jingle. But is Pizza Delivery a good episode? Yes, it is. Yeah, this episode is great, guys. There are so many memorable lines and sequences. It's literally gag after gag. Every one of them hits it right on the nail. It is one of the funniest episodes ever, in my humble opinion. Be it ever so humble, there's no place like episode 5B, Home Sweet Pineapple. After his house is destroyed, SpongeBob must find a new home. Fun fact, this is the first appearance of SpongeBob's parents. My favorite part? Patrick squishing SpongeBob with his rock. Spiders, spiders, spiders. But, does this episode make me want to go crawl under a rock? No, it's a good episode. It has a lot of different gags, from building a house to bunking with a friend. It's just a solid episode all around. Don your tights because it's time for an old kind of hero. Episode 6A, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. SpongeBob and Patrick try to bring Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy out of retirement. This is the first appearance of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. You know, that fact really isn't that fun. Anyway, my favorite part is Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy trying to fight SpongeBob and Patrick and having no effect whatsoever on them. But is this episode effective at making me laugh? It's actually super effective. It is a good episode. The concept of old superheroes is just a genuinely funny one, and one that I hadn't seen before. Although the Powerpuff Girls would do it again a few months later in July 28th of 2000, but we won't get into that. Anyway, this SpongeBob episode is great, and it really plays up the fact that these are old superheroes that really can't do much anymore. Clever plot, clever gags, good episode. Moving right along to 6B, Pickles. When SpongeBob messes up an order, he finds he can't remember how to do anything right. Fun fact, this is the first appearance of Bubble Bass. Yeah, that character shows up a lot. Anyway, my favorite part is SpongeBob's descent into madness. But, is this episode maddening to watch, or is it a good episode? It's a good episode. You know, insanity seems to be a running theme with SpongeBob. You see it happen to a lot of characters in a lot of different episodes, but especially here, it is just wonderfully silly to see SpongeBob forget everything. Also, the over-dramatized standoffs between Bubble Bass and SpongeBob are just great. The hallways will be safe and secure thanks to Episode 7A, Hall Monitor. SpongeBob takes his job as a hall monitor a bit too far. Fun fact, this is the first episode Mrs. Puff gets put in jail, which is a recurring theme in the series. Highlight, SpongeBob being the open window maniac. Funny stuff. But, is it funny enough to be a good episode? Yes, it is. It's got some good Patrick being stupid humor, it's got some good SpongeBob overreacting to his position of power humor, some good gags, not really much to say. Plug your ears and keep your clarinets hidden because it's time for episode 7B, Jellyfish Jam. SpongeBob's house gets taken over by partying jellyfish. You know, this is the first episode to use computer effects. On SpongeBob's pineapple house during the rave scenes, you'll see the jellyfish making indents in his house, and it looks a little bit computerized, but otherwise it looks pretty good. Anyway, my favorite part are the rave scenes, because it has some really solid animation. But is it solid enough to be a good episode? Yes, they do a lot of fun things with jellyfish, and a lot of fun things with the animation during the dance scenes. Just a fun episode, not much to say here either. Prepare for liftoff. On episode 8A, Sandy's Rocket, SpongeBob and Patrick think their friends are aliens. Yeah, not really an easy episode to make a brief plot synopsis. Anyway, the peanut butter and toothpaste scene when they're floating in the rocket was a part of a scratch and sniff promotion at, I think, like Burger King or something, where Nickelodeon gave away these scratch and sniff cards, and they would air these scratch and sniff logos in the bottom corner, and you would scratch and you would sniff and you would smell nothing remotely close to what it showed on screen. Also, apparently, for some shows, they completely forgot to take out the Scratch and Sniff logo, like, years after the Scratch and Sniff cards were no longer in circulation. Anyway, my favorite part is them thinking that Squidward's an alien. But, is this episode alien to being a good episode? No. It is a good episode. It's another one of those good SpongeBob and Patrick idiot plots. Plus, it's just a fun concept to roll with, and SpongeBob and Patrick dive headfirst into it. Also, I'm going to make a note here that this is one of the few early episodes that really plays up Sandy's scientist side. Now, I'm not saying that she didn't have a scientist side in the early episodes. Here's proof that she did. But I'm just saying this is one of the few episodes that focused on it. Episode 8B, Squeaky Boots. Mr. Krabs is driven crazy by the boots that he cons SpongeBob into buying. This is Pearl's first appearance, and my favorite part, Mr. Krabs versus the window. Let's just say he loses a few legs in the process. But, does this episode have a leg to stand on? Yes, it does. Looking back at the episode, you might only remember how annoying those boots are. That's all I sure did. But honestly, it had a ton of good gags, some fun animation with SpongeBob and the boots, and just a wacky plot. Remember what I said about characters going insane? This is another one of those episodes, and this time it's Mr. Krabs' turn. Get ready to commune with nature in episode 9A, Nature Pants. SpongeBob decides it's time to live in the wilderness. Fun fact, Squidward mentions giving SpongeBob 11 minutes, which is the average length of a SpongeBob episode. My favorite part? Patrick's breakdown. But, does this episode break down to be a good episode? Yes. Now, I'll admit the plot is a little bit weak, but it did have a lot of different and fun gags in there, from nature gags to Patrick going insane this time, to all sorts of really weird and obtuse gags. That's 9B opposite day in reverse. Anyway, Squidward convinces SpongeBob it's opposite day in an effort to sell his house. This is the first time we see Squidward try to move out, which is another common recurring theme. Really? Wouldn't you try to move away too? Anyway, the highlight of this episode is SpongeBob and Patrick being Squidward, they're Squidward. But, is this episode a bad episode, or is it the opposite of a bad episode? It's the opposite of a bad episode, which would be a good episode. There are a lot of clever opposite gags, from wordplay to actions to weird reverse logic, and some really awesome animation gags, and all sorts of fun little things in this episode. Episode 10A, Culture Shock. The Krusty Krab puts on a talent show. Fun fact, Squidward references famous poet Allen Ginsberg. No, I have no clue who he is either. That's just what Wikipedia told me. Anyway, my favorite part is the crowd's reaction to SpongeBob. But, did this episode have a good reaction with me? Yes, it's actually a really good episode. It has a lot of good gags from a lot of different characters. A ton of them show up, from Plankton to SpongeBob's parents. And there's some clever jokes about art and all that sort of fancy pants stuff. Really solid episode. Grab your uranium because it's time for episode 10B. Fun. SpongeBob tries to befriend Plankton. Fun fact, literally, the Fun song is featured on the Nick Karaoke CD, which I also may or may not own. Anyway, the best part, of course, is the Fun song, although I prefer Plankton's verses to SpongeBob's. But, is this episode versed in making me laugh? Yes, of course it is. It's got good Plankton bits, it's got an interesting story, it's got a funny song, it's a classic, and you gotta love it, really. It's a good episode. Hey you, wimp, you're not enough of a jerk to watch episode 11A, MuscleBob BuffPants. SpongeBob uses fake muscles to fool people into believing he is strong. Fun fact, SpongeBob's arms falling off are a running gag of this episode. My favorite part is Buff SpongeBob. Not fake arm Buff SpongeBob, like actual Buff SpongeBob. He imagines himself to be buff at the beginning, and it's just this creepy musculature humanoid body that SpongeBob's head is like placed onto, and he imagines doing all these everyday activities. It's weird and funny. But, is it funny enough to be a good episode? Yes, it is. The jokes are weak. Wait, let me rephrase that. The jokes about SpongeBob being weak are surprisingly strong and make this a really funny episode. Ooh, episode 11B, Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost. SpongeBob and Patrick think Squidward is a ghost. Fun fact, this is one of the rare times that Neptune uses the word dead. In fact, the entire plot is revolved around them thinking Squidward is dead. Anyway, my favorite part is the wallpaper gag. Really didn't see that coming the first time I watched it. So, is this episode dead in the water or heavenly? Actually, it's neither. It's a meh episode. Yeah, I wasn't thrilled with this one, guys. I found the plot to be interesting, but not interesting enough, and there weren't too many really good jokes in the episode. Don't get me wrong, it had a few funny gags, but not as hilarious as the other episodes, and I find the plot to be a little bit awkward at times. It's not bad enough to be considered a ScumBob episode, but there is definitely something lacking from this episode. Get ready to get long, tan, and handsome, because episode 12A, The Chaperone. SpongeBob accompanies Pearl to the prom. Fun fact, SpongeBob couldn't get a date to his own prom, and Patrick went with his mom. What a dork. Anyway, my favorite part is the Do the Sponge song. Really, how can anyone resist it? But, is this episode sponge-tacular, or is it scum-tacular? Actually, it's meh-tacular. Yeah, I wasn't thrilled with this one either. The plot is interesting enough, I suppose, but it's very much out of the show's element, dealing with teenage satire. It occasionally delves there with Pearl, but not very often, and this is the first time they did it. It just doesn't seem to work here, and especially the ending to the plot where it's Sponge Dummy that went with Pearl. How does that make any sort of sense? And I know it's supposed to be a gag, but I don't find it particularly funny, especially consider it pretty much ruins the plot of the episode, or makes it make no sense whatsoever. If it were funnier, maybe I could excuse it, but it's really not. There's also a lot of gags in this episode that just don't work. Also, a lot of random violence happening in the background of this episode, which can be funny, but I found wasn't executed well enough here. Again, there were some good parts. The song itself, Do the Sponge, is pretty funny and awesome parody of dance crazes, and there are some interesting concepts and funny gags in the episode. So not bad, just meh. Hopefully we can get out of this meh slump with episode 12B, Employee of the Month. SpongeBob and Squidward compete to be the Employee of the Month. Fun fact, according to The Wall, SpongeBob has been Employee of the Month 43 times. I sat there and I counted. But SpongeBob says he's been Employee of the Month 26 times, so who knows how long he's been working at the Krusty Krab, or maybe he's just really bad at math. Anyway, my favorite part was the patty hitting the fan and then hitting Squidward's face. Really funny running gag. But, was it funny enough to be a good episode? Or are we stuck in meh territory? Don't worry guys, we're back to good episodes. Yeah, SpongeBob and Squidward going crazy while trying to compete for the Employee of the Month is some really good stuff. There's a lot of cool paranoid humor and a lot of over-the-top traps that SpongeBob and Squidward pull on each other. Plus the irony of ruining the restaurant while trying to get Employee of the Month at the place is pretty awesome. You scared, bro? Get ready to be, because we're up to episode 13A, Scaredy Pants. SpongeBob is sick of being the only one scared on Halloween. Fun fact, this is the first appearance of the Flying Dutchman in the non-flesh. We see him in comic book form in Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost, but here's the first time he actually appears. Anyway, my favorite part is the twist ending, funny gag, why everyone runs away screaming. But, did this episode have a lot of brain power going into it, or is it as dumb as Patrick? Well, it's a good episode, I can tell you that much. Yeah, it's a pretty fun Halloween episode. It's interesting to see all the characters dress up for Halloween. It's interesting to see the Flying Dutchman in the non-flesh for the very first time. It's interesting to have that little twist at the end with SpongeBob's brain. There's a bunch of clever gags here and there, and it's another cool episode where a bunch of characters show up. So, all in all, pretty solid episode. Remember to feed your pets, because we're up to episode 13B. I was a teenage Gary. Squidward is neglectful of Gary while pet sitting. Fun fact, the title of this episode is a reference to the movie I Was a Teenage Werewolf. Haven't seen that one. Anyway, my favorite part is Squidward trying to get Gary with the needle, but really stabbing SpongeBob. But, did this episode stab me through the heart like the first ScumBob episode on the list? Yes. Yes, it did. That's right, guys, this is a dreaded
ScumBob episode.
I didn't want to believe that there could be one in Season 1, but honestly, this is not a very good episode. Everything from the fact that the plot is all over the place, from Squidward babysitting for Gary while SpongeBob and Patrick were away, to SpongeBob as a snail annoying Squidward, to that ending where they're singing. The plot is all over the place. There isn't that many funny gags. It has a really awkward ending, and I don't even get what SpongeBob wants from Squidward. Is he trying to haunt him? Is he just trying to annoy him? Say hi? I don't get the character's motivation. And really, does it make any sense that the snail medication would actually turn someone into a snail? It's just not funny, it's a weak episode, and it's kind of awkward. I get that they wanted to do something to go along with the Halloween episode, but this is just not good. So yeah, there's a bad episode, right there in Season 1. As much as I want to say Seasons 1 through 3 are golden, and they are, they still do have a few flaws in them, as is only natural. But again, this is all my opinion. If you disagree, that's totally fine. Let's just move along and hope that it gets better from here. Episode 14A, SB129. When Squidward tries to hide from SpongeBob and Patrick, he accidentally goes on a time-traveling odyssey. Fun fact, the title card for this episode is read out loud, which doesn't actually ever happen. Also, it's floating, which it's rare that the title card ends up moving, and SB129 is a reference to the fact that this is episode 29 of Season 1, the way it splits up with segments and all. Anyway, my favorite part is Squidward's reaction to the future! But, is this episode futuristically bad or historically good? It is historically good. This is a really good episode, and it is a really weird episode. It's actually the first one to star Squidward, and it's also a really surreal episode. Yeah, we see the past, we see the future, we see this weird space where Squid's just alone. It's very surreal, but there's also some really good jokes thrown in there. It doesn't abandon the comedy just to be weird. It is a weird experience, but it is also classic SpongeBob comedy, and so it is a really good episode. Hiya! Episode 14B, Karate Choppers. Mr. Krabs forbids SpongeBob from karate. Fun fact, this is the first episode in which SpongeBob gets fired. My favorite part, SpongeBob and Sandy not doing karate. But is this episode karate-tastic, or is Mr. Krabs gonna have to shut it down? As it turns out, it is a good episode. There is a lot of funny karate gags, from SpongeBob terrorizing people he thinks are Sandy in disguise, to Sandy and SpongeBob trying not to do something that they really love doing. It's got a lot of good gags and a really funny story. Oh, sorry guys. Episode 15A, Sleepy Time. SpongeBob invades everyone's dreams. Fun fact, according to the licenses seen in the dreams, SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs' ages are 13 and 57 respectively. My favorite part? SpongeBob is a clarinet. La 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 la, la 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 la. But, is this episode a spongy soft dream, or a scummy nightmare? It's a spongy soft dream. A good episode. They do a lot of fun things with the dream sequences. Even if it really doesn't make that much sense that SpongeBob can travel through dreams, I'll forgive it because they have a lot of fun and there are a lot of interesting gags, from Squidward playing at this grand opera house to Mr. Krabs trying to catch Moby Dollar. There's a lot of fun things in this episode that you wouldn't have even seen in the average SpongeBob episode. Ugh, I think I'm getting sick. I hope I'm not coming down with episode 15B, Suds. SpongeBob gets ill with a case of the Suds. Fun fact, this is the first appearance of Hans, the live-action Hans. I'm not sure if he ever makes a reappearance, but I thought that was important enough to point out to you guys. Also, I think he appears in the opening sequence, although I can't be sure if that's him. Anyway, my favorite part, of course, is the sponge treatment, and the treatment that Patrick gets. But, is this episode worse than reading magazines in the waiting room, or is it nice and fun like a sponge treatment? It's a sponge treatment. A good episode. They do a lot of funny things here, with Patrick trying to impersonate a doctor and Sandy trying to come in and rescue SpongeBob. A lot of interesting gags with SpongeBob's physiology of being able to sneeze bubbles. Just fun stuff all around. Good episode. I just love that I'm reviewing SpongeBob, don't you guys? Episode 16A, Valentine's Day. When Patrick thinks SpongeBob didn't get him a Valentine's Day gift, he runs amok. Fun fact, SpongeBob gives everyone a gift on Valentine's Day. I guess that's what happens when you're asexual. Anyway, my favorite part is Patrick going ballistic. More of that insanity thing. But, do I love this episode, or do I not love it? I love it. It's a good episode. There's a lot of interesting things going on, with Patrick going absolutely insane to SpongeBob giving everyone a gift and Patrick being really jealous. It's a really interesting concept for an episode, and they do a lot of fun carnival gags and Valentine's Day gags and Patrick going insane gags in there. What episode are we up to? Let me check my notes here. Ah, right. Episode 16B, The Paper. SpongeBob drives Squidward crazy while playing with a piece of paper. Fun fact, this episode is rarely seen due to its sister episode being aired on Valentine's Day. It's in fact so rarely seen that I often confuse it with Reef Blower. I don't know why, but I think this is a silent episode as well. I suppose there's quite a few episodes where SpongeBob annoys Squidward with something. Anyway, my favorite part is SpongeBob's impressions. But, am I doing an impression of SpongeBob or Squidward when I watch this episode? I'm doing an impression of SpongeBob, which means I am happy, because it is a good episode. I don't know why, but this formula just always works. SpongeBob annoying Squidward with X object, and it also does a really good job of setting up that SpongeBob is this wonderful, happy, carefree creature, whereas Squidward cannot get the magic of the paper to work because he lacks imagination. The wind is perfect, the tide is right. Let's review episode 17A. Arrgh! Mr. Krabs takes SpongeBob and Patrick treasure hunting. Fun fact, this is the first time Patrick is hired at the Krusty Krab. He immediately gets fired, but I just thought I'd point that out because he gets hired a few more times over the course of the series. Anyway, my favorite part is the fact that they keep mentioning that Mr. Krabs is sweaty, although the compass reading Weast is definitely a close second. But, is this episode the Dutchman's treasure trove of laughs? Or is it a cheap plastic imitation of what a good SpongeBob episode should be? It's a treasure trove of laughs. A good episode. There is something about this episode that just makes it really enjoyable to watch. From the Patrick being stupid, to Mr. Krabs going completely overboard, to the board game humor, Mr. Krabs being sweaty, the pirate jokes. Everything in this episode is hilarious. It's really funny, and a good episode. Episode 17, B, Rock Bottom. SpongeBob gets stranded into a strange foreign place. Fun fact, this is the first episode to take place outside of Bikini Bottom. Yeah, we don't have that many episodes that actually take place outside of Bikini Bottom, now do we? Anyway, the highlight of this episode, in my opinion, is the fact that the buses really have it out for SpongeBob, although there are a lot of funny things about this episode. But, is this episode... I can't even do the thing, guys. Of course this is a good episode. It is so memorable, so funny, so unique, so strange. They do such a good job of setting up this strange, weird location and this whole feeling of being lost there and the feeling that everything has it out for you in this strange land is just hilarious and good parody right here. It is a really strong episode and ridiculously memorable. Y'all better get ready for episode 18A, Texas. I'm not gonna do that accent anymore. SpongeBob and Patrick try to prevent Sandy from leaving Bikini Bottom. Fun fact, Sandy's last line in her song is sung by country singer Junior Brown. Nah, I don't know who he is. Anyway, my favorite part is the Texas insults. They're so pathetically stupid, it's just really funny. But, was this episode as good as Texas barbecue, or as bad as... Barbed Q? It's a good episode. There's something about the Texas jokes that are just really funny. Plus, Sandy's singing is pretty cool, and it has a really fun chase sequence. It's also Sandy's turn to go absolutely ballistically insane, so with quite a few memorable sequences and some good jokes, it is definitely a good episode. Hold your heads up high because it's time for episode 18B, Walkin' Small. Plankton teaches SpongeBob how to be assertive to suit his land development needs. Fun fact, SpongeBob's stand-up routine is similar to Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, what's the deal with the new SpongeBob episodes? My favorite part is SpongeBob eating ice cream. But, is this episode walkin' tall or walkin' small? This episode is walkin' tall. Actually, the episode's walking small, but I'm using it as a metaphor to say that it is a good episode. Yeah, the assertive jokes are great. SpongeBob being a jerk to everyone on the beach is hilarious, and then reverse being a jerk to everyone is hilarious. Also, seeing everyone take advantage of SpongeBob is kind of funny too, considering he is a sponge. It's just a funny episode, and of course, you can't go wrong with Plankton in these early episodes. Get ready for episode 18P, I'm just fooling you guys. It's episode 19A, Fools in April. Squidward has to apologize to SpongeBob after a prank goes too far. Fun fact, this is the first time Squidward's mom is shown, although not in person. Anyway, my favorite part is SpongeBob's ice prank. It's really funny when it comes down to how paranoid people can get when they think they've been pranked. Does this episode need to apologize to me for being bad? Nope, it's a good episode. Watching Squidward have to apologize to SpongeBob but not be able to actually say it is really funny. Also, SpongeBob's pranks are pretty good, and seeing Squidward be the ultimate curmudgeon that just can't get into the spirit of the holiday, and then when he finally does, takes it way overboard, is really funny. Legend tells of episode 19B, Neptune's Spatula! SpongeBob faces King Neptune in a fry cook-off. Fun fact, John O'Hurley voices King Neptune in this episode. No, it's not the same King Neptune we see in the movie, or in the other part of the series. Let's not dwell on that, though. My favorite part is the fry cook-off. But, is this episode unfit to even scrub the royal tail fin? Or is it a good episode? Actually, it's meh. Yeah, I even asked you guys on Twitter what you thought of this episode, and while no one could really call it a bad episode, no one was really defending it that hard. It's just a meh episode. There's not too many good gags, and for some reason, it's just really forgettable. It also doesn't help the fact that it doesn't have that strong continuity, considering King Neptune here is different than the King Neptune we see later, and is much more memorable when we see him then. There's also a few other gags that I just don't feel really work with this episode. I don't know what it is, but I can't find myself calling it a good episode. We're on the home stretch here, guys. Episode 20A, Hooky. SpongeBob gets addicted to riding hooks. Fun fact, SpongeBob plays both literal and figurative hooky, by which I mean SpongeBob is hooked on playing with hooks while playing hooky. Oh, that's complicated. Anyway, my favorite part is Patrick playing with the hooks, all of them in his mouth, and being like, "What's dangerous about this?" Funny stuff. But, is it funny enough to be a good episode? Yep, it's pretty funny and got a good plot. I really don't have much else to say. Let's move right along to the last episode of Season 1. Hang on guys, let me take a second here to catch my breath. I have reviewed a lot of episodes. Episode 20B, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 2. SpongeBob spends the day with Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. Fun fact, this is the last episode of Season 1. My favorite part? Spring Boob Squarepint. I don't know why, but that name just sticks with me. But, is this episode good enough to stick on the board of good episodes? Leave me alone, it's the last one of Season 1, and I have had to make up these stupid things for all season long, and I'm running out of them? Or is it up on the board of good SpongeBob episodes? Wait, no. Or is it good on the board with the bad It's a good episode, guys. Just a fun episode, some fun gags. It's all over the place, but in a good way. And that is every episode of SpongeBob Season 1 reviewed. Whew, that took a long time, but it means nothing if we don't look at this data in a scientific way. As you can see by this pie chart, there were 37 good episodes, 3 meh episodes, and 1 ScumBob episode. The meh episodes being Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost, the Chaperone, Neptune Spatula, and the ScumBob episode being I Was a Teenage Gary. That is not too bad when you look at it. So, as a whole, I can safely say SpongeBob Season 1 is a great season. A real classic and just pure SpongeBob at its spongiest. But that's not all, guys. There's a few more things I want to talk about when it comes to SpongeBob Season 1. Firstly, I'm sure you're all just dying to know what are my favorite episodes of the season. Let me very briefly list my top 5. At number 5, we have SB129. Being so surreal, interesting, and yet funny at the same time make it a great episode. At number 4, we have Opposite Day. The jokes in this one are just really clever. At number 3, Rock Bottom. Come on, it's such an iconic place and episode. It's really funny and really good. At number 2, we have Arrgh. Everything about this episode just works. So many of the jokes are really funny. At number 1, we have Pizza Delivery, which is pretty much there for the same reason as Arrgh. It's just really funny and really memorable. Now let's move on to a few misconceptions I had about Season 1. Yeah, going into the season, there were a few things that I thought that ended up being the complete opposite when I actually watched the season. Again. So, firstly, I figured that the animation would be really rough, being the only season that wasn't digitally animated. As it turns out, the animation was only rough for the first quarter of episodes. The rest of the season looks really clean and pretty much just like a slightly more rough version of Seasons 2 and onward SpongeBob. Really, I think they just had some odd coloring issues in the first few episodes. Secondly, I thought the show would have to warm up to being funny. Like, the first half of the season wasn't really going to be particularly funny, but nope, as it turns out, the show is actually pretty funny right out the gate. Even though, from the first episode or two, you could tell that they were still getting their sea legs, so to speak. The show was definitely consistently funny, even as far back as Help Wanted. And my last misconception was that the episodes would be really annoying and dull to watch after having seen them so many times. Remember, guys, I may not have seen these episodes in maybe 7 years, but before that, I watched them ad nauseum as a kid. Nick aired them a ton. I had them on DVD. I watched them a lot. But as it turns out, they were just as fresh as when I had first watched them. They can still get a laugh out of me. There are still things about episodes that I don't have specifically memorized, and even the things that I do have memorized, there are still interesting things going on in the scene that I don't remember when I remember back to the funny episodes. And hey, even seeing them now as more of an adult, I get more of a better perspective on some of the humor. It is actually a real joy to rewatch these, and I'm really looking forward to rewatching the rest of the series. Alright, now let me just list a few observations I made about the season. So, it features a lot of episodes that are based around very simple tasks like jellyfishing or blowing bubbles that are blown up into an entire episode, which is really interesting that the plots are just simple yet elegant. There are a lot of episodes that are named after very simple things that are just like one word sometimes, like Jellyfishing or Bubblestand, which kind of makes it confusing considering how many episodes the show would later go on to have. This is the only season not to use digital coloring, as I mentioned. The shows were really gag-based, where the humor would come from a very simple task, but all the gags along the way taking up so much time. Like, there'd be one gag, and then another gag, and another gag, and then they'd switch, move the plot along a little bit, and then there'd be gag, 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 move the plot along a little bit, gag, 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 gag. Whereas some later episodes would focus a little bit more on the story, here it is totally about the gags. Not that they're completely devoid of story, but the gags come first and the story comes second. This one's just a little note. Plankton is actually consistently tiny in this season. Get it? But actually, it's strange because in a lot of later seasons, even seasons 2 and 3, they kind of cheat Plankton's height, make him tall enough that you can see him in shot with the other characters, whereas in this season, he's just about as big as SpongeBob's thumb, fairly consistently throughout the season. Oh, and the "my leg" gag happened 9 times as far as I counted. Also, I will have to say, it was pretty hard to review these episodes. In fact, my inclination was just to say, well, this episode was a classic. I don't even need to look at it. It's just a good episode. But no, I went and I rewatched every single episode, and I tried to come in with a very fresh opinion, not just going on nostalgia's sake. I looked at each and every episode and asked myself, did this episode make me laugh? Did this episode have a clever plot? Was this a good episode? Perhaps the scariest note of all is the fact that I am honestly excited to watch some SpongeBob episodes that I haven't seen yet. Yeah, that's right. I genuinely hope there are good SpongeBob episodes out there that are from the newer seasons because I have really fallen back in love with this little guy, and I want to see some really good things come out of it. Yes, it sucks that the show is going on for so long, but let's just keep our fingers crossed that maybe there is some gold later on down the road, even if it wasn't worth all the hardship and pain it took to get there. But we've still got 3 more seasons of stuff that I am familiar with. Before I end the video, I would just like to extend some special thanks to a few places. The SpongeBob Wiki, because it has a ton of information on SpongeBob, even if a lot of it seems like it was written by 5-year-olds. Seriously, read part of the wiki and you'll see what I mean. Also, SpongeBuddy Mania, the forums that gave me this idea in the first place, and Wikimedia for all the fun, non-copyrighted images I put in there. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. I'll see you in Season 2. PIEGUYRULZ, out.